Hey guys, and welcome to Should You Buy It, where all we do is talk a little bit about the game and tell you whether or not we think it's worth the cost. In this episode, we'll be playing Sons of the Forest, the open-world survival horror game where your goal is to just not get eaten by cannibals while keeping yourself alive and figuring out what the heck is going on this crazy island. Now, the first question that we always cover in these videos is what stage of development is the game in? And in this case, Sons of the Forest is currently in early access and available on PC for $30. Now, if you guys want to save money on games, you should check out Humble Bundle in the description below. Humble Bundle will not only help to give you a discount on games sometimes, but will also help charity and support this channel. Everything you purchase on Humble Bundle will go towards helping a charity, helping our channel, and giving you some kind of a discount if there's a discount running on that game, which they have tons of discounts that Steam does not all the time. And again, if you want to save money, just check out Humble Bundle down below by clicking the link. So what exactly is the game? Well, Sons of the Forest is the sequel to, well, The Forest. It is also a game that brings together the best elements of the survival and horror genres, as well as manages to do this without making one genre feel like it's overpowering the other. With that being said, let's start off by talking about the survival elements such as food, building, and penalties for death. When it comes to maintaining all your bodily needs, things like food, water, and tiredness will all play an important role, but are not something that will kill you directly. You see, the way the food system works is that the lower your hunger, thirst, or energy go, the smaller your maximum energy bar will be. And when I say energy, we're talking about stamina here. And your max stamina bar is extremely important when fighting cannibals, as you need it to swing, run, and block, as well as for just about everything else in the game. So while hunger may not directly kill you, it will certainly make you a very easy target for the vicious creatures around the island. If you do happen to die though, don't worry, as you are given a free death every few in-game days. What will happen is as you die for the first time, you'll be captured by those cannibals and hung out to dry basically. After cutting yourself loose, you'll then need to pick up your backpack before continuing on your journey. If you get caught a second time, however, then the cannibals will just kill you on the spot and you'll be forced to load a previous save. Up next, let's go ahead and talk about the building mechanics, as it's a very anticipated feature within this title. The way the building system works is that you can interact with the world by placing things down in a somewhat pre-planned way. For an example, let's say you want to build a wall for your house. Well, you'll first need to build the foundation for that house, which you simply need to place some logs on the ground for in a square-like pattern. After that, you'll need to place some baseboards on that square platform, and finally, you'll want to place down a log wall. After all of this, you can now go ahead and pull out your axe and cut a hole in the wall for your door, and then place some more baseboards down to be your door. It sounds confusing, and to be honest, it kind of is at first, but we will talk more about it in the pros and cons section of the video. Before that though, let's quickly talk about the horror elements of the game. The Forest, meaning the first game, really emphasizes the horror elements of that title, whereas Sons of the Forest, meaning the second game and the one we're talking about here, tries to balance it out with the survival elements being a bit more important, but also not directly impacting the scary and horror elements. In other words, the game is less scary and spooky and more has this grotesque feel about it. This isn't necessarily a bad thing though, as I think a lot of the fear people felt from the first game is lost after you know what to expect, and to be honest, there isn't a lot of horrifying new things in Sons of the Forest when compared to the original, which is why it loses a bit of that kind of horror element. Now, let's go ahead and move into the pros and cons section of the video. First up for the pros is the near perfect blend of the two genres, which are survival and horror. Neither one of these two genres is too much of a pain to deal with, which makes the whole game enjoyable. For an example, the food does penalize you, but if you don't eat, it doesn't mean you can't experience the rest of the game. If you decide that you don't want to go into the caves, you can just focus on the survival elements and build an awesome, cool base and try to defend it. The whole point here is that neither one steps on each other's toes too much, but they both intertwine with each other in a way that people who just like horror games and people who just like survival games can have a great time while having a nice blend of the two for those who want to play both of them. Second is the building system, and yes, I do think this is a pro, although some people may not like it. Now, let me explain why. The building system is unique because you can actually really get down and get nitty-gritty with your customization of your home. To be fair, it is a little bit unintuitive at first, but once you get the hang of it down, it's really not hard to understand how to build things, whether that be a fortified wall or just be a little house or even a zip line. It's all simple and it's all easy to do once you know what you're doing, and it is way more interactive than just depositing resources into a pre-built structure, which does still exist for those of you who want that. Third is that the new friendly NPCs and their AI seems to be really good. Granted, it isn't perfect just yet, but everything from the mutant girl you see in the trailers to Calvin, who is that guy you meet right at the very beginning, and he basically just does jobs for you, all seem to be really nice additions to the game. Calvin in particular is extremely good to have, as Calvin just goes out and farms you resources while you sit at home and do whatever you want to do, or you go out on adventures. It removes that whole repetitive nature that survival games has, and I think honestly could be the future of survival games, but we'll just have to wait and see how much people actually enjoy them. But again, personally, I think they are great additions to the game. After that is the enemy AI. The enemy AI in Sons of the Forest is definitely a step up from the first game. While they still do have all those same core elements from the first game, they seem to be more so able to notice you, figure out what's going on. They kind of have a more realistic nature to them. Like for an example, the first couple of days, they'll just kind of come up to you and kind of look around and see who you are, and you can scare them off by threatening them or something like that. And after a while, they'll eventually start to get stronger and they'll decide, you know what, we want to go take that guy. He's food, let's go get him. And then they'll come after you. So either way, the enemy AI just seems really good when compared to some of these other games, as they seem more like an actual encounter with something that hasn't seen a normal human before than they do just seem like some kind of a creature that's there for you to kill and get some XP. Finally, for the pros is the difficulty options, and these currently are peaceful, normal, and hard mode. We personally played on normal mode and went ahead and beat the game on that, but for some of you, you may want more of a challenge, and I will say if you did like The Forest, meaning the first game, I do highly recommend you try it on hard mode, as normal wasn't too challenging at all. But if you don't want to deal with all the combat elements and just really want to focus on building and things like that, then peaceful mode might be the way to go for you. Either way, these three modes cover all the bases when it comes to pleasing the majority of the audience. Now let's move into the cons section of the video. First up for the cons is that the game just has a lot of bugs, and some of you may not have experienced all of these, and that's perfectly fine, but multiplayer in particular has a ton.
What the hell am I watching right now?
There were many situations where a friend got stuck and we had to kill them in order to get them loose, or we had to reload a save, or an item got stuck in our hand and we couldn't get it out of our hand, and all sorts of other different things. Either way, the game definitely is a little buggy at the time of recording this video, but I'm sure those will be polished out in the future, so don't let that hold you back too much, as there was nothing too game breaking, at least not with a friend to help you get out of it. If I was solo, then I probably would have had to load an old save if I got stuck in some of these spots. Up next is that the story was pretty awful. I'm not really going to say a whole lot here. I'm just going to say that it wasn't really good. I think it's a huge letdown when compared to the previous version of The Forest, and if you've never played the original version of The Forest, then I highly recommend you go check that out after playing this one if you did enjoy this one, as it's just straight up better in my opinion. After that is that the crafting options in the game were very limited, and while the animations for crafting things are cool, they were just that. Animations, nothing really special other than an animation when you craft something. As far as the options go, there are a very limited select amount of things for you to craft, especially when compared to the previous game. Yes, there are some cool things you can make, and there are a couple of new things, but for the most part, it feels like there's just not enough for you to do with all these materials that you're gathering that you could be doing to make your life much better. Again, this will probably be polished out in the future, but at the time of recording, it feels just a little bit lackluster. finally is that the combat felt a bit too simplistic and easy to deal with once you knew what to do for most of the enemies. Again, there are some enemies here who this doesn't apply to, but for the vast majority of them, this does. I mean, for an example, let's say you just had a random cannibal out in the world. All you need to do is spam left click, and you're probably going to win the combat with that little cannibal there. Whether it be 3, 4, or even 5 cannibals, they rarely attack you together, which means all you need to do is spam left click on each one individually and make sure that you don't run out of stamina. So as long as you're not caught with your pants down or something, you should basically be always able to win a fight with just about any enemy. And just to clarify, there are some enemies that are harder than others, it's just not that hard to deal with them. So now it's time for the rating for the game, and when we rate games, we want to get 1 hour of enjoyment out of every $1 that the game costs. So for this game in particular, in Sons of the Forest, we would want to get roughly 30 hours of enjoyment out of the $30 cost of the game. And after completing the entire game for Sons of the Forest, we give it 7 out of 10 potatoes. Yes, Sons of the Forest was a great game and we had a great time playing it. Unfortunately, due to the bugs and the lack of overall content and the story just being a bit lackluster, we felt that the game didn't really deserve a higher rating at this time. Keep in mind, this game is planned to have another 7 to 8 months of early access where they're going to add some extra things to the game, polish out some of those bugs, and it will probably bring up our review for this game maybe to an 8 or a 9, so just give it some time if you think it might not be worth your money yet. With that being said, we feel that Sons of the Forest is more than likely worth the cost. With all that being said, if you guys liked this video and want to see more content like it, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, we do also have tons of Sons of the Forest tips videos to help you get started in the game, so make sure to check those out. Finally, I want to give a big shout out to our Platinum and Above channel members, which currently include Jonathan S., Caustic FPV, Gerald89, Jim Phillips, and AZ Blackbird. I'm Game Advisor, and I'll see you next time.